Somebody help him! It's going to rip his leg off!
The scream came sharp and sudden, tearing through the thick, humid air of the island like a gunshot. A camera hit the dirt with a crunch. Blood hit the leaves like someone sloshed paint over the jungle floor. Somewhere beneath the low-hanging branches, a man, mid-50s, face twisted in pain, was screaming for his life. And right there in front of him was a Komodo dragon. Not behind a zoo barrier, not in a documentary. Real, massive, and latched onto his leg. You could hear it even before you could see it, the wet tearing sound as the dragon's jagged curved teeth shredded into muscle like it was tissue paper. The man kicked, yelled, tried to shove it off, but it didn't flinch. Its jaw stayed locked. Tourists froze. Some pulled out their phones. Others couldn't even move. The guide was shouting, waving a stick, but no one dared step closer. Then, like the jungle itself had turned on him, the screaming stopped. But this wasn't some horror movie. This wasn't some made-up island adventure. This happened to a real man on a real island because of a single bad step and a false sense of trust. Before we show you how it all went down and why he thought he could get that close, make sure to subscribe to Animal Story. We bring you the real stories of people and animals that will leave you stunned, moved, and questioning everything you thought you knew about the wild. Hit that bell so you never miss a true tale like this one. Because now we need to go back to where it all began. His name was Klaus Zimmerman. He flew across the world for this shot, and he nearly didn't come back. August 2014, a blistering afternoon on Rinca Island, one of the few places left on Earth where Komodo dragons still roam free, untouched, unpredictable, and terrifyingly real. Klaus was a veteran wildlife photographer from Germany. Quiet guy, deep thinker, 54 years old with a graying beard and soft eyes. If you sat across from him, you'd never guess the man had once crawled within 6 feet of a Siberian tiger or camped solo in the Arctic to snap a photo of a polar bear in the wild. But he wasn't reckless, not usually. He had rules, and one of those rules was simple: never get too close. But something about Komodo dragons pulled at him. They were ancient, prehistoric, more monster than reptile, and yet almost motionless, like statues, like they didn't care. That's what lured people in the illusion that they were so slow, lazy, docile. That illusion would cost Klaus everything. He'd been on the island for nearly 3 weeks, trailing the animals, tracking their movements. Each day he returned to base with breathtaking shots. The glint of saliva on their teeth, the shadows of their thick bodies cast across dry rock, the soft rise and fall of their lungs in the heat. Locals started calling him the Dragon Whisperer. Tourists recognized him. One even asked for a selfie. People said he has a connection with them. But what no one realized, not even Klaus himself, was that he was getting closer. Literally, day by day, inch by inch, until one day there were no inches left between them. On that final morning, he told his guide, "I want the shot from below. One last one. Something special before I go." He crouched low, adjusted his lens, and stepped closer. 3 steps too many. The dragon had been lying in the shade for hours, barely moving. Not a flick of the tongue, not a twitch. Until Klaus's knee hit the dirt, and the dragon lunged. No warning, no hiss, just a blur of jaws and dust. The guide screamed. People ran. But for Klaus, all the noise vanished the moment he felt the teeth go in. Through fabric, through skin, through muscle, straight into the meat of his leg like a meat hook. And it didn't let go. Klaus screamed. The Komodo pulled. And for one long, breathless moment, even the birds went silent. To understand how a man who loved animals with all his heart ended up torn open by one, we have to understand what made him think he was safe. Klaus Zimmerman didn't grow up chasing danger. He grew up chasing silence. Born in southern Germany, he was the quiet kid who sat in the corner with a sketch pad instead of a soccer ball. His father was a steel worker, his mother a librarian, and Klaus found magic in stillness, in the way a deer lifted its head at sunset, in the way frost clung to pine needles in the forest behind his house. By the time he was 14, he had saved up for his first camera, a clunky used Nikon with a cracked lens. It didn't matter. That camera became his passport to a different world. He didn't just take pictures. He listened to animals, learned how they moved, what made them bolt, what made them stay. And over time, he started to believe something deeper. If I show people how beautiful they are, maybe they'll stop hurting them. That belief carried him far, too far maybe. By the time Klaus was in his 30s, he was winning awards at National Geographic, BBC Wildlife, even a few TED Talks about conservation photography. But none of that filled the hole that had quietly grown inside him. His wife Anna passed away from ovarian cancer when she was just 42. They had no children. Klaus stopped submitting photos, stopped replying to friends, stopped eating much of anything. And then one day a postcard came in the mail. No return address, just a photo of a Komodo dragon sunning itself on a rock. He taped it to his fridge. 6 months later, he booked a one-way ticket to Indonesia. Rinca Island wasn't paradise. It was blistering heat biting insects in rough terrain. But to Klaus, it felt like purpose again. And when he saw his first Komodo dragon, massive, still like a statue with a heartbeat, he felt something strange. Peace. He spent his days quietly trailing the dragons from a safe distance, documenting their movements, their hunting patterns, their bizarre slow-motion dance of survival. His guides noticed how patient he was, never rushed, never loud, always respectful. He treats them like old gods, one of them joked. But it wasn't a joke, not really. Klaus saw beauty in their brutality. He admired the way they didn't fake anything, no pleasantries, no masks, just instinct and survival. And in a world full of noise and fake smiles, that kind of honesty felt comforting. He started naming the dragons in his notes. The big male with a torn tail, Brutus. The sleek female that patrolled the cliffs, Lyra. And the one that would later tear into his leg, he had named that one Argon. To locals, Klaus was just another eccentric foreigner with a fancy camera. But over time, he earned their respect. He followed their rules, kept his distance, helped clean up trash from the beaches, paid his guides fairly, gave free prints of his photos to the rangers. But there was one thing they couldn't teach him. Komodo dragons are not pets. They don't bond. They don't remember faces. No matter how many days you sit near them, they are not dogs. They are not horses. They are not even tigers. They are walking weapons designed to kill slowly. But Klaus, maybe out of grief, maybe out of hope, started seeing them differently. He told one ranger, "There's something gentle in their eyes, like they know me." The ranger shook his head. "They don't know anyone, Mr. Klaus. They just know meat." Still, Klaus felt sure. He said he could tell the difference between curiosity and aggression, that if a dragon didn't flick its tongue, it wasn't in hunting mode. That Argon, the one with the thick neck and calm eyes, had accepted him. It was the kind of thinking you hear from people who've spent too long alone. And on his final morning on the island, Klaus woke up early, took a sip of instant coffee, packed his lens cloth and water bottle, and looked down at the little note he had written in his field journal. "Today I want to get closer, just one more step." By the third week, Klaus was no longer just an outsider with a camera. On Rinca Island, the guides had started calling him Pak Klaus, a term of respect usually reserved for elders or community leaders. He laughed the first time they said it, but he didn't correct them. He liked the idea of being seen as someone who belonged. Each day, Klaus followed the dragons, quietly documenting their movements with a kind of reverence, as if he were recording sacred rituals. He never ran, never made sudden moves, always bowed his head slightly when he approached, like a guest entering someone else's home. People began to take notice. A short video of him lying belly down in the dirt while a Komodo dragon ambled by, just a few feet away, went viral on TikTok. Comments poured in, "This guy has a death wish. He's either a genius or insane. Man's really out here talking to dragons like he's in Game of Thrones." But Klaus didn't care about the fame. He cared about connection. He believed the animals could feel it too, especially Argon. Argon was one of the bigger males, over 9 feet long, weighing close to 180 pounds with a thick tail and a scar that ran across his snout like a lightning bolt. He was slower than the others, more deliberate. He didn't fight for food. He waited, watched. Klaus admired that. He told his guide, Surya, that one, he's different. He's not just surviving, he's thinking. Surya wasn't so sure. Maybe, or maybe he's just full. Klaus chuckled but didn't drop it. He believed Argon had a rhythm, a personality. He claimed the dragon recognized him, followed him with its eyes differently than it did others. "He knows I'm not prey," Klaus said. "We've spent enough time together." But time doesn't build relationships with reptiles. Time just makes you forget they're dangerous. Still, the bond felt real to Klaus. Each morning he'd track Argon, if he could find him, snapping photos as the dragon climbed over fallen logs or sprawled under the shade of a tree. He even gave him space just enough to seem respectful, but not enough to forget the camera. The pictures were stunning. In one, Argon stares directly into the lens tongue halfway out, framed by golden light filtering through the branches. It looks staged like a professional wildlife calendar shot. But that wasn't the picture Klaus wanted. He wanted one more, a final one, the perfect one. A low-angle frame of Argon lying in profile, jaws slightly parted, sun glinting off his scales. Klaus had practiced the setup in his head for days. He knew the shot. He just needed the moment. And the courage to get a little closer. On August 14th, Klaus woke up before sunrise. He skipped breakfast, packed his camera gear, and told Surya he wanted to head toward the north clearing where Argon had been seen the day before. Surya hesitated. That's close to nesting ground. Females are aggressive this time of year. Klaus shrugged. I won't bother them. I just want to see him one last time. They found Argon right where Klaus hoped, resting beneath a thick mangrove tree, half his body in the sun. He looked half asleep, tongue flicking out, lazily, chest rising and falling like a lazy tide. Klaus dropped to one knee, then both. He adjusted the lens, framed the shot. Then he slid forward. Just one more step, just a little closer, just enough to make the photo sing. Surya's voice came low and tense from behind. Pa, Klaus, that's close enough. But Klaus didn't move, didn't speak. He was in the zone, the space where photographers forget everything but the frame. The world narrowed to a single image. Click, then another. Click, and then a blink. Just a blink. That's all it took. Argon's eyes snapped open, his body coiled tight. And for the first time since Klaus had met him, Argon moved. Fast. Too fast. If you've ever looked into the eyes of something wild, you know when the air changes. The stillness Klaus had always trusted, it broke. In a split second, Argon's body shifted. His head lifted, pupils dilated, nostrils flared just enough to catch a scent. That low, lazy posture was gone. And so was the illusion of safety. But Klaus didn't back away. He froze. To him, it was a misunderstanding, a momentary reaction. He told himself, he's just curious, he's not threatened. But the guide knew better. Pa, Klaus, back up. Now! Surya's voice was sharp, cutting through the heat like a blade. Klaus nodded without looking away. He adjusted the camera slightly. Still aiming, still believing, still trusting. And that was the problem. See, the signs had been there. Small ones at first. The twitch in Argon's tail, the still tongue, the low grunt barely audible like gravel rolling over gravel. It wasn't aggression, not yet. But it wasn't comfort either. Klaus had spent years with wild animals. But the truth, he hadn't been spending time with Komodos. He had been spending time with his own idea of them. He thought familiarity meant safety. It didn't. Komodo dragons don't bond. They don't imprint. They don't care that you've been following them around with a camera for 3 weeks. The moment your scent shifts, sweat, adrenaline, fear, they smell something else. Vulnerability. Even the park rangers had started getting uneasy the week before. They had warned him twice not to approach any closer than 5 meters. That wasn't a guess. That was protocol. Komodos can lunge at over 12 miles per hour in short bursts. You'd never outrun them. But Klaus wasn't the reckless type. That's what made this so hard to predict. He was careful, deliberate, gentle, until he wasn't. Something had changed in him on this trip. The stillness that once brought him peace now demanded more. He wanted one moment, one frame, one connection, something beyond the camera. He didn't realize he was being pulled into danger by wonder. And no one, not the locals, not his guide, not even Klaus himself could talk him out of it. He kept saying, I know him. He knows me. I'm not afraid. But in nature, love and fear mean nothing to the animal staring you down. Surya had started staying closer. He carried a long stick, not that it would do much if Argon decided to strike, but it was better than nothing. That morning, Surya noticed something odd. Argon wasn't licking the air. No tongue flicks. That's how Komodos smell. If they stop flicking, it means they've locked in on something. Usually by something alive. Surya said it quietly, more to himself than anyone diaphokus. He's locked on. Klaus didn't hear him, or maybe he did and chose not to listen. He was already lowering the camera, looking straight at Argon now, eyes soft, movement slow, like a man stepping into church. The dragon didn't blink, didn't move. Until it did. You know that feeling you get when a storm is about to hit. The pressure drops. The birds go silent. The hair on your arm stands up. That was the moment before the lunge. Klaus's hand hovered near his camera bag. Surya reached out. Please, sir, stand up. But Klaus stayed kneeling. smiling, whispering something no one else could hear. And then the air snapped. Argon's tail flinched, his jaw opened wide, and in one terrifying, seamless blur of motion, he lunged. It happened fast. But Klaus would later say he felt it coming. The shift in the air, the weight of silence, the sudden overwhelming stillness just before nature explodes. Then Argon launched forward, all muscle and all mouth, his front claws scraping the dirt, jaw wide open, teeth curved like serrated steak knives. Klaus barely had time to drop his camera. He didn't scream at first, not out loud, not until the pain hit. Because when Argon bit, he didn't nibble. He clamped down right into the soft part of Klaus's left calf and held. The sound that came out of Klaus wasn't a scream. It was a gurgled, raw howl, primal and panicked. Blood poured from the wound instantly, soaking the ground, spraying across his khakis like a grenade had gone off inside his leg. He tried to shove the dragon away, but it was like trying to push a boulder. Argon twisted his head. That was worse. Flesh tore, muscles separated. Klaus collapsed sideways, hands scrambling in the dust, eyes wide and wild. The helpie finally shouted, "Oh God, help me." Surya dropped his stick and lunged forward, grabbing Klaus by the shoulders and dragging him back, his boots sliding in the dirt. The dragon resisted, its jaw still locked tight. Klaus's legs stretched in a horrible angle, the flesh tearing like pulled pork under tension. Then something snapped. Whether it was the dragon's jaw relaxing or a tendon giving out, no one could say. But the moment Klaus was free, Surya dragged him another 15 feet before dropping to his knees, breathless and pale. Blood was everywhere. The back of Klaus's leg looked like it had been run over by a lawnmower. You could see the bone white exposed wet. He was shaking, mumbling, tears in his eyes. I didn't think, he whispered. But the Komodo wasn't finished. Argon stood there still watching, tongue flicking now, sensing the blood, the movement, the fear. He took one slow step forward. That's when another guide, Rico, arrived, waving a burning branch they'd grabbed from the fire pit back at base. The smoke, the flame, it finally made Argon back off. But barely. The next 20 minutes were a blur. Surya wrapped Klaus's leg with his own t-shirt, trying to slow the bleeding. Rico radioed for the emergency chopper on Flores Island, but that would take at least 30 minutes. Klaus's face had gone gray, his breathing shallow. He kept asking the same question. Is it still there? Is he still watching me? He didn't mean Argon, not really. He meant the animal he thought he knew. And in that moment, as he lay on the jungle floor surrounded by panic and blood, Klaus finally understood. There was no connection, no bond, no understanding, only instinct. He had made the fatal mistake of thinking trust was a two-way street. But in the wild, trust only goes one way. When the helicopter finally landed, Klaus was barely conscious. The ranger station loaded him onto a stretcher as quickly as they could. He passed out from blood loss midair. And when he woke up in the hospital in Jakarta the next day, he was missing half his lower leg. The infection had spread. The tissue was too far gone. They had to amputate above the knee. He would survive. But Klaus Zimmermann would never walk the same way again. Not just because of the prosthetic, but because something inside him, something he once believed in so deeply, had been torn away too. Back on the island, Argon was never captured. He wasn't punished. He wasn't relocated. Because he didn't break any rules. He was just being exactly what he was born to be. The story made international news within days. German photographer mauled by Komodo dragon. Komodo Island attack sparks. Safety debate. Nature doesn't forgive a close encounter gone wrong. But for Klaus Zimmermann, headlines didn't matter anymore. Not while he lay in a hospital bed in Jakarta staring at the clean white ceiling, the lower half of his left leg gone. They saved his life, barely. Doctors said if the helicopter had arrived even 10 minutes later, the infection would have reached his heart. The Komodo's bite wasn't just physical, it was biological warfare. Its saliva, laced with over 50 types of bacteria and anticoagulants, had turned Klaus's wound into a slow-burning death sentence. Antibiotics bought him time. Surgery took the rest. But something else had been amputated too. His faith. When Klaus finally spoke to reporters, his voice was flat, hollow. I got too close, he said. That's on me. He didn't blame Argon, not once. He was just doing what he does. I forgot that. Back home in Germany, his daughter flew in from Switzerland to care for him. She hadn't spoken to him much over the last few years, partly distance, partly grief. But something in her shifted when she saw her father, once so strong and independent, learning to balance on a prosthetic. They talked more now, not about dragons, about life, about how short it really is, and how long it takes to forgive yourself. Online, the reaction was mixed. Some people called Klaus arrogant, said he deserved it. Others praised his humility and courage, said he was lucky to be alive, called it a miracle. But perhaps the most powerful reaction came from the rangers on Rinka Island, people who had grown up around Komodos, people who never once thought of them as pets. They started pushing for stricter access policies, for better trained guides, and for foreign tourists to understand one simple truth. Wild is wild, no matter how still it looks, no matter how long it lies there, no matter how much you want to believe otherwise. The island didn't change, the dragons didn't change, but Klaus did. Months later, after months of rehab and surgeries, Klaus posted a single photo on his old photography blog. It was the shot he took just seconds before the attack. Argon lying under the mangrove tree, tongue halfway out, sunlight dancing across his scarred snout. The caption was only 3 words: "I got close." Nothing more, nothing less. And it was enough to stop you in your tracks. So what do we take from this? Was Klaus foolish for trusting a predator? Was he brave for trying to connect with something no one else dared approach? Or was he just human longing to find meaning in a world where control is often just an illusion? People ask, what happened to Argon? The truth, nothing. He's still out there, still roaming the hills and dry riverbeds of Rinka, still sunning himself on warm rocks, still waiting, not hunting humans, not remembering Klaus, just surviving, just being what he was always meant to be. And maybe that's the hardest part to accept. Klaus lost his leg, he lost part of his spirit, but he never lost his love for animals. He just learned the difference between respecting the wild and trying to tame it. So now we'll ask you, do you believe love is enough to overcome wild instinct? Would you have stepped into that clearing, lowered your camera, and trusted the dragon? Or would you have listened to the warnings and walked away?